Good morning. I am glad to be here today. I come from Ajax, so it was a wonderful drive. If it was during the week, it would have been a very, very different conversation. I'm going to assume most of you don't know who I am. Let me give you 2 minutes on me, and then we'll get going. My name is Brett. My background's actually education. I have been speaking for 28, almost 29 years, but for the first 9, I was a teacher. Back then, it was the Scarborough Board. Now it's the Toronto District School Board. I taught rotary science to grades 7s and 8s. I left that when this became a full-time job, and I've traveled extensively, predominantly Canada, but throughout North America, speaking on issues that I think we either don't like, don't want to, or don't know how to, a mix of all of those. So mental health, parenting, marriage, media, pornography, dating, all the kind of fun things. And mental health is kind of, it's not just my favorite talk, it's also my biggest journey. When I left teaching, I did a program called the Arrow Leadership Program. I then went and did a Master's of Evangelism and Leadership, which is a school down in Chicago called Wheaton. And during that time, I'm an international student. I'm a 50-minute flight away, but I'm doing school in the US. And so I had to pay a lot of money for the Master's, so I began speaking around 250 to 300 speaking dates a year. And as a quote-unquote Christian leader, I was always numerous times involved in interventions with others until I realized I'm actually being intervened on, whatever the term would be. People are booking lunches with me, family, friends. You need to slow down. And I said, I will, when March 1st, 2012 hits, because that's the day I will graduate, and that's the day I will rebalance my life. I graduated, and then my life began to unravel. I was speaking down the road in Woodstock, and 400 or 500 students in a room for a youth event, and in the middle of my talk, everything shifted. Half the brain keeps speaking, and the other half was like, you're passing out now. I'm 6'6". How do you do that? Do you just fall over? Do you go down to one knee? And then for the rest of the talk, I argued with myself while I spoke. Went to my doctor, he said, you have anxiety. I'm like, no, I speak on anxiety. He says, no, you have anxiety. I went home, did a few things for a few weeks, and I thought, what a journey that was, and I went back to work. I was speaking in Camrose, Alberta, and I had my first panic attack. Panic attack, fight or flight, I fled. Picture like Welcome Brett, and you see me drive off in my car. I left 1,200 people at a retreat who came to hear me speak, and I never came back. That was my first of about 250 panic attacks that I counted. And then after 9 months, I collapsed in a parking lot. I was speaking at a camp called Lakeshore Pentecostal Camp, collapsed in the McDonald's, and didn't leave my cottage for the week, didn't leave my house for 5 months, and didn't work for an entire year. It's now 13 years later, and I still struggle every single day of my life. It's why I sit in a chair. Someone said recently, oh, you're the sitting speaker, and I'm like, okay, there's a hashtag in there for social media somewhere, but I'm like, yeah, I am. I know we're not Catholic, but Pope Francis once said, recovery is making a life despite limitations. And I've learned from me, I can't stand. I get dizzy very quick. My main issue is sleep. This is my Aura ring. It does sleep tests on me every night. Last night I had 3 minutes of deep sleep. If you know sleep, that's not enough. My body responds with ferocious anxiety, and the spiral goes. And 54 doctors later, I'm still unwell. I'm married with 2 kids. My wife's name is Dawn. She's in, it's called Ontario Health at Home. She's a pediatric home care nurse. My daughter Zoe was in school for 2 years down in London at Western, transferred to Mac, did 2 years, and is just finishing a gap year and heads unbelievably to law school in September, and we're looking forward to that. My son Ben just graduated Queen's. He's currently in Barcelona, I think, touring Europe with a backpack like many of us did when we were young, and he's hoping to go to become a psychotherapist, which is actually what 5 years ago, added psychotherapy into what I do, so I'm a counselor and this, trying to figure out what halftime looks like. I still haven't figured that out yet. Our favorite family member is none of us, though. It's actually Phoebe. Phoebe is our English bulldog, who's the best part of each of our days. We're all here for different reasons, and I make assumptions. Some of you journey like I do. Some of you are looking at me, you've never told a soul, and you struggle every day of your life. Some of you are here, and it's your spouses, your children, your parents, your friends, your family, your whoever who journey. And I do think we could begin a conversation on prevention. I'm not saying we can prevent everything, but I think there are some things we maybe could. So I find myself stuck at home years ago. And I'm on my couch, I go to leave, my hands begin to shake, I begin to panic, my mind's calm, my body panics, and it was an interesting season. Friends, family, Christian leaders come into my home and sit across from me on my couch. And Job's friends kind of rolled through my brain often as they would say, have you tried? Put a line and put anything you want to in that line. Most common was, have you tried Jesus? And I would say, what do you mean by that? They're like, Jesus. And I would say, I know Jesus. And then they would leave, and then usually I would cry. Because what does that mean? It's like, it's a chocolate bar, and I haven't taken a big of a bite of the chocolate bar, and they would leave, and I'd be like, did I not try you? And like, I call this whack-a-mole, where you ever seen like a 10-year-old boy at like a fair, and the mole pops up, and we pound it down. It takes everything in us to go to an environment or something, or for me, just having a conversation, and then I always felt like someone hit me. Then the next person would come in, and they're like, have you tried vitamin D? And I'm like, vitamin D and Jesus are very different things, but both are really good. And the next person would say, have you tried running? And I would say, I haven't left my house in 5 months. And they're like, but have you tried running? My wife comes up to me and says one day, what would you do if you ever spoke again? And I said, hun, I'm never speaking again. I haven't left the house in 5 months. I packed up my speaking gear. It's in the garage. I thought I was done. And she said, what would you do if you ever spoke again? And I said, I want to do something different. I don't just want to have you tried. I'm very pragmatic. I'm very structured. What do you do if you're struggling? And that began the birth of this conversation. So very simply this morning, we're going to look at some definitions, some first steps, where a faith plays a role, some practical application, and we're done. And here's my prayer that we're not done. The goal today is that this is a spark. It sparks conversations amongst you as a congregation, as families, as small groups, as just people who may be journeying. I want to begin with one quote, and I used to end with it, and now I begin with it. Stephen Grekvich, in his book, Mental Health in the Church, wrote, herein lies one of the most pervasive misunderstanding regarding mental illness. It's that God spares this kind of pain and suffering from those with deep and abiding faith. I am not unwell because I don't have a deep and abiding faith in Jesus, but I am also unwell. What do you do with that? These are the nuances of mental health that I find, especially half my clients are Christian, half are not, but my Christians come in with this extra layer of baggage and unwellness. Every book, by the way, I suggest I have on an Amazon page. I'll give you that at the end. Henry Cloud, author, once said, if you're filled with the Spirit, you will always be happy, in no pain, or have any struggles. He then paused and said, well, that can't be farther from the truth, can it? So mental illness and mental health, just some definitions. Mental health is defined by the World Health Organization as a state of well-being in which we can realize potential, we can cope with normal stresses in life. Are we living in a world with normal stresses in life? Multiple wars, turn the news on every day. Prices, the list goes on of everything. But we can work productively and fruitfully. We can make a contribution to our community. We all have mental health, just like each of you also have physical health. And this can be good or bad. Now, I also think, I'm a 53-year-old currently, 54 in 2 weeks. I'm 53 for another few weeks, though. We need to realize that we pathologize everything too quickly these days, right? We so quickly go to anxiety or depression. So regular anxiety. If you're on the worship team today, if you had to come pray or speak today, some of your hands would shake, and it's like, yeah, that's normal. If you have to do a presentation in class, you're going on a first date, first job, normal. If you're sitting at home tonight, not watching the Leaf game, this is going to be anxiety through and through the whole evening. But a normal night, just being at home and you're having some heart palpitations, you're like, why? What's happening? Then we begin to be concerned. And the same is with depression. Feeling blah sometimes. Now, sometimes we know why. There's been a death in the family. You didn't get into the right program. You broke up with a boyfriend or girlfriend. Or maybe there's just a season of, Or how about this morning? A few days ago was beautiful and sunny. Today's a bit blah. It doesn't mean we have clinical depression. And everyone who doesn't like us isn't a narcissist, which is what I hear so often as a therapist. So mental health, and the other kind of axis would be mental illness. This is a range of conditions in which there's standard criteria that we use for these things, such as depression and anxiety. And these are diagnosed by a psychologist, a psychiatrist, or a medical doctor, not YouTube. We are inundated with people, and we always say students, and I'm like, no, and adults who are diagnosing themselves with pathology because of a YouTube or a TikTok video. I'm at a talk, and a young woman, 15, 16, walks up to my booth, and she says, I have bipolar. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I said, where did you get diagnosed? And she said, well, I was watching a YouTube video the other day, and in my head, I'm like, uh-oh. And she said, the video said, if you're happy sometimes and sad others, you have bipolar. And I said, or you're human. That is the human condition. We feel happy sometimes and sad others, but she's been living for 2 years with an identity that's not even hers. Church in the UK wrote me, this is what they use at their church. This is going to take a second to think, but it's the idea of this. Even though I have high mental illness, I can work at having good mental health. Some of you struggle with physical health. You can still work at having good mental health. By the way, take as many pictures as you want. I know this will be online after, and I have other versions of this online as well. We have seen a staggering growth in anxiety and depression as well, and there's many, many questions for this. But we do have a huge amount of reasons why we journey. Predisposition, some of us, it's our genetics. It's not a very large number, but some. Traumatic events, experiencing homelessness, neglect, abandonment, war, PTSD, the list goes on. Burnout or breakdown, me. Isolation and loneliness, which is something we're still seeing. We're the loneliest generation ever in human history, and the most connected generation, we say, in human history. Chronic unwellness, substance use. How about social media? Every time my Apple Watch taps me, I get a dopamine hit to the brain. Every time your laptop gives you a notification, you get a dopamine hit. What do 500,000 dopamine hits do to a human? We don't know. We are all the petri dish. We're all the experiment, and it's not looking good. Relentless pressure, the stress we have on life. We don't eat well. We don't sleep well. Many women struggle with postpartum and never address it, never talk to anyone. I have 2 friends whose kids got concussions playing sports, now struggle with anxiety. And how you're parented, if you're free this afternoon, parents, the more we overfunction out of love, the more our kids will underfunction. And we are creating fear-based parenting is creating fear-based kids, and anxiety is through the roof these days. Just a slide from later. Adolescence is now an extension of childhood rather than the beginning of adulthood. Many years ago, a grade 11 or 12 was more like a college university student. Now those have gone down. A grade 11, 12 is more like a grade 9, 10, and 9, 10 is more like a middle schooler. I'm not walking through this morning, but just the changes. I put the purple are parenting, like driver's licenses. We used to be 96 to 98% of us. We're now at 42% of us. But fear, if we're fearful as adults, we create fearful kids, and anxiety and worry is part of that. And then media on the bottom. You can just see there's so many things to address. I do think we often, as the church, give a different set of rules to mental health than we do for physical health. The person's throwing up in a toilet. The person says, have you tried, not having the flu? Said no one ever to somebody with the flu, said to everyone who's ever had anxiety. And the last one, the person's given themselves an insulin shot for diabetes. The person says, I don't think it's healthy you have to take medications every day just to feel normal. Don't you worry it's changing you from who you really are. Said to none of you taking heart medications for any other thing, but said to every single person who takes medications for anxiety and depression. It's interesting. The theme that I hear, and I've heard from thousands and thousands of people, is this. The church, the greater church, has hurt me more than it's helped me. Maya Angelou, poet, activist, once said this: do the best you can until you know better, and when you know better, do better. The hardest thing in a talk like this is, how do I challenge us to be better without shaming and condemning us from where we are? And we just need to be better in this, because these aren't big changes. A futurist named Alvin Tollefson once said this: the illiterate of the 21st century are not those who can't read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. And I do think we need a bit of a relearning in this conversation. It was 7 years ago I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. Some of you know Lyme, some of you don't. Is it part of my journey? I don't know. I've been diagnosed with so many things. I have a Lyme doctor in New York City. I am now going on extensive medications. So I posted to my social media people, hey, I don't do well with meds. Would you pray for me? It's humbling. Thousands of people, entire churches said, we're praying for you. I posted the exact same message, though, 12, 13 years ago when I went on mental health meds after not leaving my house for 5 months. I got the same messages, but what I got different with the mental health ones were the private messages, where people, not just a few, dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens wrote me and said this: if you take a single medication for your mental illness, you're not a Christian anymore. Just sit with that, just for it. First off, I begin to question, do you know the basic tenets of Christian faith? It's not like we believe in the Trinity, the resurrection, and not taking meds. Like, we've really taken a minor, but here's what we say now. If you don't believe in the minors, you can't believe in the majors. And so what about medicine? From asthma to sleeping pills, no one cares. Here's what I just mean. Like anyone else struggling with allergies right now, all the trees bloom. Many of us can't breathe. We pop Reactin and that doesn't usually work, but like, it's okay. But the moment we hit depression and anti-anxiety, we're really polarized. I hope none of you ever have to take medications. And I hope doctors are doing all the other things before we do medications. As a therapist, I'm always like, let's do all the foundational things, and then if those aren't working, we can talk about where you could help getting meds. But if you need meds, it's okay. It's okay. And there's science today. Inagene.com will do a DNA test on you and tell you what meds might be better for you. So how do you know if someone's struggling? I can't just look around and say, well, you're good, you're not, you're good. Like, we struggle in here, and then we struggle all through our bodies. There's an incredible mind-body connection. So signs of mental health struggles, changes in eating and sleeping patterns. Social isolation. We're well past COVID. The people who are not here, the people who even just don't come. There's many people who aren't here because of social anxiety. It's just so hard to even come to a building, which is where technology is wonderful, where people can hear a sermon and be part of community, but not actually here. Mood changes, and most of us feel these every day. Not able to function, yeah, now we know we're in trouble. Apathy, loss of desire to do things. Substance abuse, which, I mean, often people say to me, well, we're Christians, we don't have these things in our churches, and I'm like, sure we do. We are the church, you are welcome to come in, we will journey with you. One of the great things I think we have as the church is people, and we can journey with you with whatever you're dealing with. If you're looking at friends and family, even yourself, look at your self-deprecating statements. I'm so stupid, I'm so worthless, I'm not enough, whatever it might be. Sudden drop in grades, and here's the number one sign of mental health struggles. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Which is why I kind of really enjoyed during COVID, we did these emoji check-ins. I encourage you now, when we're back into the real world, to ask people how they're doing twice. How you doing? Good. How you really doing? Oh, let me tell you about my week. Like, there's that second time where we actually begin to address things. So what do? You are here. I'm assuming most of us here are Christ followers. There's probably visitors and other people who are not, but what do you do? Not wishful thinking, not avoidance, and not a million roads in a million directions. My favorite thing is just the simplicity of body, mind, and soul. I've only attended 2 churches. I grew up Fellowship Baptist. I grew up at a church called Bayfair. My mom is still there. I then married a Pentecostal. I know it's not supposed to happen. And then we now attend an associated gospel church called Sanctus. But every church I've ever attended has this as their mission statement. I'm at a talk once, and a man stands up in the middle of this talk and says, that's satanic. That's horrible for anyone, but as a speaker with anxiety, I looked off to the left. I thought, I'll take a breath. I took a breath. On the wall is this massive tapestry. It says, meeting the physical, emotional, and spiritual needs of our community. And I'm like, that's satanic? And the guy looked over and he went, oh, my bad. And he sat down. That was the end of that conversation. I like this. Here's why I like this too. Each of you believe one of these is more important. And there are 3 roads I'm a kinesiology major by trade. I'm also a therapist and I'm a Christian. But your family doctor is a good beginning for the body. It might be physical. It probably is. It's a therapist, a registered therapist is a good person to talk to about the mind. It might be emotional. Now let me journey this sentence, because here's what I say. It's probably not spiritual. And what I mean by this is the answer to mental illness is rarely in your faith. Similarly, the answer to cancer is rarely in your faith. But my faith is the bedrock and the foundation of everything I do in life. And so we grow our faith while we walk through all of these things. And it is not a competition between God and other things. Then someone would say, like our last song, do we believe in healing? And I would say, God can do whatever God wants to do. But do all who pray for healing get healed? No. Do most who pray for healing get healed? No. What do we do with that? Because if all we do is we blame the person suffering, then I kind of find we're victim blaming. You didn't read enough. You didn't pray enough. I had a man come up to me after one of my talks, weeping. And he just said, I'm reading my Bible. He's reading his entire Bible every few weeks. He's reading 8-9 hours a day, struggling with depression. And I'm not getting better. He was told that's all he needs to do is to read your Bible. By the way, read your Bibles. It's really good to read your Bibles. But he wasn't doing anything else to walk through that journey. Anne Voskamp once wrote in one of her books, miracles are never a function of anyone's goodness, worthiness, or earnestness. Miracles are always about the mysteriousness of his ways. So there's the tension, right? I prayed for a night's sleep every night for 13 years. I have none. And I again tonight will pray for another night's sleep. So I pray for healing. I do everything my doctors, I go to functional clinics, naturopaths, doctors, everyone tells me to do. I do all of this at the same kind of time. I do like the quote, if all you have in your hand is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And so I would just say, I think theology is the toolbox. And I want you to grow your faith, grow the bedrock from which we journey. And likewise, we grow the tools that go into that. And there's lots of tools. If all truth is God's truth, then all these things are good things that we can look at and do. And I love your head tilt sideways because you'll now remember some of those things. But I want you to grow your toolbox, and I want you to grow your tools and the language around this conversation. So here's my journey. I've had physicals done. I have blood work taken, extensive blood work. I've been to a sleep specialist. Anyone here been to a sleep specialist? Quick show of hands. Whole bunch of us. If you don't know, you go to like a strip mall, there's usually a Subway, and then in you walk with your pillow at 9 o'clock at night, and they stick electrodes all over you, and the guy says to you, like, okay, I'm going to be watching all night on that camera, and you're like, what? And then he leaves, and the first time I ever went to one, I've been to 5, I said to the doctor in the morning, I know we're meeting in a few weeks, but can you fix me? And he said, no. And I looked down, and he said, no, look up, look at me. He says, that's good. First person to ever tell me this. He said, in all the things it could be, look at sleep, cross it off, and go on to the next one. And I'm like, It was the first kind of, this is a journey. A friend of mine's a youth pastor in Alberta. He has a breakdown very similar to me. Married, 5 children, pastor at his church. He has a breakdown. His lead pastor says, you will not go to a doctor, you will not get a sleep test, you will not take medications. Side note, religious abuse, not okay. Not okay. Calls me 5 months in, and he says, I'm not long for this world. This is the beginning of our Can you hear? Like, I said, what's the main thing? He says, sleep. I'm like, go to a sleep clinic. There's nothing spiritual about a sleep clinic. Go use people who have God-given knowledge, like they can look through these things. And so he goes, he says in the morning to the doctor, can you fix me? The doctor goes, yeah. You have the worst sleep apnea I've ever seen in my career. They put him on I call them Darth Vader machines, BiPAP, CPAP machines. He's better in 1 day. Do you see why there's such nuance to this conversation? All these other things I've done, but exercise, sleep, and food, exercise bar none. I mean, the Bible's filled with physical analogies. Your body is the temple. Run the good race. Research is clear. This, I don't care what you do, but do this, and then sleep better, and then eat better, whatever that means. Food is often the culprit or the cure. So while you're doing this, we also then sit down and talk through things. I never realized I had 2 pathways, and my therapist, to me, saved my life. I gained control, I gained perspective. The kid is just the idea of having fun. And if you're like, but Brett, psychology, Christianity? It's like, yeah. Ed Stetzer, I think he's left now, but he was part of what's called Lifeway Research. They actually do research on Christianity and psychology and science, and like literally everything's just thrown on the table and there's good discussions. And while you're doing this, build your faith. Build your faith. Our circumstances will never alter the character of God. God is God, and we are not God. In these moments, I just say, God, what do you want me to learn? Build your faith, grow your faith. And when I'm in a public environment, I can't use this, but I use this. And these things are still good for us as Christians. Purpose, volunteer. Even if you're unwell, volunteer, whether at church or other organizations in town. The Bible is filled with gratitude. Do you do a gratitude exercise every day? Every day, I do the 3 good things. I challenge all my clients in therapy to do this. What are 3 things you're thankful to God for today? Research says if you do that for 1 month, you'll have about 7 months of kind of better mood. Family and friends, people. Every moment you can, be with people. The church offers us so much. There's something regulating about people. Be here every moment you can. Small groups, church events, church, like anything you can, be in and amongst us as people. Mindfulness is just breathing. This is not waiting on Jesus. It's not just solitude and silence, but it's, if you're anxious, you're probably not breathing with your belly, you're breathing with your upper chest. And so take 10 breaths and feel the air go across the top of your nose. And the spoons analogies, just, if you're unwell, you only have so many spoons to give, so be careful what you give your spoons to. So how does our faith play a role in this? Henry Nouwen once said, our life is full of brokenness, broken relationships, promises, and expectations. How can we live with that brokenness without becoming bitter and resentful, except by returning again and again, and I would add in again and again, to God's faithful presence in our lives? I guess the simple thing would be is just this. Do we trust God is who he says he is? Which means this, if I never get better, God is still God. And I'm not speaking something over myself, but I don't actually think I'll be better. I've been unwell for 13 years. And if this is it, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'll still do everything. I'm still praying every day, and I'm still doing everything I can do, but I don't know. And if that's it, that's okay. Paul had a thorn in his side. This might be my thorn in my side, right? We all have some things we've journeyed with. And if I get better tomorrow, God is still God. And no matter what you're going through, God is there, whether you feel him or not. And if you're struggling with emotions, you will struggle connecting with anyone. It's interesting, though. We say we have a faith in God, but the moment we don't feel God, we say we don't have a faith. But faith is faith in the unseen and faith in the unknown. I struggled for a while just with all of these discussions, and I read a book by Richard Winter. He says there's 5 reasons we struggle. The first 3 are the main ones, but you can't not talk about 4 and 5. Number 1, Genesis 3. We are in a fallen world, and we are deeply affected by it. If I could give each of you a mic, you'd each be able to tell me of the loss and the pain. Some of you have buried children, family, spouses, like the things that have happened to us. We live in a fallen world, and we are deeply affected by it. Number 2, we live with the effects of others' sins. One of my best friends growing up was a guy named Warren. Warren was killed by a drunk driver 18 years ago, and we live with this always. That's just, we all lost our friend. Number 3 is our own sinful nature. Everyone told me, you're doing too much, slow down. And I said, I'll be fine. I was wrong. I would give anything to go back and to redo it. Now, there's a fallacy in my own discussion and argument because I assume I would have had a breakdown no matter if I was teaching, if I was just speaking. You do not have to speak 300 times a year to have a breakdown. It could happen to anyone. I still would like to have a chance to go back and try. And number 4 and number 5, depending on the denominations you come from and the church you come from, we either talk about this too much or too little. Often, I'm at a church and I flipped my legs back and forth and I kicked over a water bottle and someone came up after and said, what was Satan trying to do to you? And I'm like, nothing. I knocked my water bottle off. Like, sometimes we theologize. That's not even a word. You know what I'm trying to say? We overdo that. And God's discipline and discipleship, there's verses that I don't like. It's good for me to be afflicted so that I might know your decrees. God tests his people and his prophets to know what's in your heart. Now, as he goes into this, he's not saying God gives you this or cancer or other things as well, but he just said you need to address these things. I posted Thomas Merton's prayer of abandonment all over, paraphrasing, God, I have no idea what's going on, but I trust you, and I'll trust you always. It's always interesting, though, as we read Scripture, because I think we always read Scripture like we're Naomi and Ruth and not like we're Elimelech. We're never the person who died. We're always the person, the hero. And during these journeys, I think we can be, I said to my pastor the other week, I feel more like Elimelech, like the husband who died, than I often would be Ruth and Naomi in their life journeys. That's why I appreciated reading, anyone know the name Joni Eareckson Tada? She wrote, so she didn't write a Bible, she wrote a topical Bible. It means you take the Bible and then there's just these call-outs and pages of suffering throughout. And if you're like me and you go through a dark journey, it's interesting what we read. Like my favorite books of the Bible ended up being like Ecclesiastes, Job, Malachi, Old Testament prophets. It's interesting what you connect with when you're feeling unwell. So what did I need? I needed someone to sit with me, someone to listen to me, and sometimes someone just to be with me. Now the next slide, I always take a breath because we've all done these things. I'm just going to say, maybe we don't do these anymore. And if we do them, maybe just think through them. So the first would be this: don't say everything happens for a reason. And let me just say a few things. I don't think this is biblical. It's actually more Islam than it would be Christian. This is determinism, if this, then that. But even if you believe everything happens for a reason, then this should be something you could go to sick kids hospital and you see where sometimes this falls a bit short. As long as everything happens for a reason, it might mean someone passes away, someone dies in a car accident. There's some interesting theological discussions here. But to say to someone who's unwell, everything happens for a reason, what are they going to say back to you? What's the reason? And you will say, I don't know. And you will leave. And do you think that person feels better or worse in the moment as they rack their brains for a reason? Don't be anxious about anything. I don't think this has ever helped anyone. I also think we think that word is modern day anxiety. It's actually more like worry. And some of you are just worriers. Are you still reading your Bible? People say this to me all the time. And I'm like, are you saying if I stop reading my Bible, God does this to me? And then they're like, oh, I don't agree with that. I'm like, that's what you just said to me. And then they usually don't really know what to say. I've had lots of people tell me words from God. If you need any help, let me know. Amy Simpson, in her book, Troubled Minds, once said, mental illness is a non-casserole illness. Think through that. It was 5 years ago, I fell off, just pre-COVID. I like to bike. I fell off my bike. I hit mud. I didn't even get an arm out. I'm 6'6". I'm like 7 feet in a bike. I just went boom. I broke, let's just say, everything. All my ribs, 9 bones, everything. So I had a gorgeous orange cast. You can see it's my favorite color. And posted, hey, orange cast, look. And immediately people were like, can we bring over meals? When I posted it, I'm at home struggling with anxiety and depression. I'd love your prayers. Anybody want to guess how many meals came? I think we treat this as something different. God won't give you more than you can handle. Let's just be real honest. This is not in the Bible. God won't tempt you more than you can handle, but the Bible is filled with people who have more than they can handle. Some of you have more than you can handle every day. D.A. Carson calls this an illegitimate totality transfer, meaning where you read every possible meaning of a word into a single use of a word. 2 Corinthians 1, 8-11, Paul says, with him and his companions, we were so utterly burdened beyond our strength that we despaired of life itself. Indeed, we felt we had received the sentence of death. Paraphrase, we have way more than we can handle right now. And what do we do when we have more than we can handle? We lean back on God. Is there sin in your life? And I'm always like, yeah, lots. Then they don't know what to say. Because you know they want me to say no, and then, have you tried praying every day? Satan and the demonic, you will be okay. I just say don't say that because you don't know. It was last summer. Someone said to me, well, at least you don't have terminal cancer. You ever have a moment when you lose your breath? And I said to my wife a few hours later, I thought I was doing a lot better than I guess I am. Because terminal cancer is not good. And that's now what I'm being compared to. And I was devastated. It's just, I couldn't speak. I went home. I had to go for a walk. Don't say snap out of it. Don't say be tougher, be so dramatic. Here's what you can do. Say, how are you today? And here's the truth. Some of us don't know how to answer even that. But we can ask. Say, I'm praying for you. And if you're going to say I'm praying for you, actually do it. Whether you read physically or digitally, do you have I used to keep a piece of paper in my Bible and I'd write prayer requests. Now I use an app called Evernote. But whatever you use, do you take someone's phone and put down what's going on and keep in touch? But just actually pray for people. Say, I'm sorry you're going through this. Say something, say anything. I have good friends in my life that are not in my life anymore after my breakdown, and I don't know where they went. And I get these journeys are scary. They're scary for us going through them, but they're also scary for you. Because for many other people, you look and go, wow, if that happens to me, I don't know what I do, and we get scared. Give them a hug. I had to put ask first. Somebody rushed up and hugged someone that they don't know. So a little bit of consent here, but you know your people, your friends and family, but it's okay to give a hug. Sit with them. One of my first times back to church, we're in our gym and we had bouncy castles all blown up. And my first time back, and I walked in, it's like an after church event, and I made a beeline for a corner. And my prayer was a weird one. I said, God, make me invisible. And I slunk into the corner, and the first person in the door was one of our pastors, and he looked right at me, and I'm like, that didn't work. And he came and he sat down and he looked at me Took a big breath and he sat with me, said nothing. And about 5 minutes later, he looked at me and said, "This sucks." And I'm like, "Yeah." And he said, "I'll pray for you." And he left. And I'm just like, it was interesting. Just like the book of Lamentations, he just lamented. He just sat, right, in that space, not answers or other things. Ask, how is your struggle going? I'm at a church in Alberta, and I say, the kids pastor, musical worship pastor, those are both of her jobs, if you can believe it. She says to me, well, she has breast cancer. So I'm back speaking again. I said, "How's your breast cancer?" And the youth pastor punches me in the shoulder and says, "You can't ask her that. She's crying at this moment." And she turns to the youth pastor and says, "He's the first person to ask me in 2 years how I'm doing." How? There is such a disconnect between what we say and what we do, where we sing and we teach on these things, but if no one's asked you in 2 years how your journey is, like there's a disconnect. Talk about something else. I don't want to talk about my journey all the time, but sometimes, my favorite is my buddy who says, "I got 5 minutes. Give me an update." And you're looking at shawarma going, "Shawarma's healing?" Yes. Suicide is wanting your pain to end, not your life. Darkest day of my life, I never crossed that line, but I lived on it. My wife's out, my kids were in high school. I'm sitting on the family room floor at 11 o'clock. I haven't worked in 5 months. There's nothing in my life in this moment. Think of Alice in Wonderland. My mind's going down a rabbit hole. And I get a phone call. One of my board members, his wife says, "Hey, do you wanna?" She pauses, says, "I'm getting you a shawarma. My favorite place in the world, if you're ever coming through Ajax on Harwood Avenue, a place called Pita Delights. They're Arab Christians from Nazareth." And I walk in, they call me Brother Brett. And she passed a bag through the door. I took a bite. I remember smiling and just going, there's something about food. Do you know what I miss most from my Baptist roots? Potluck Wednesdays. And not just for the good food, but for the people. Just the connection. Me, my buddy, my friend's grandmother, someone's mother. Like it was just community. It says in 2 Corinthians 1:3, "Who comforts us in all our troubles." Why? So that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort we ourselves receive from God. If their favorite thing in the world is a Big Mac, bring them a Big Mac and just sit with them. Some thoughts and resources and we're done. Please advocate for each other. Our disconnect is those of us who are unwell don't know what we need, and those of you who are well don't know what to give. And so we have to find a way to connect. Dr. Dan Siegel says, we need to help, let's change children to everyone. We need to help everyone understand that the clouds of their emotions can and will roll on by. I'm sorry you're not feeling well today for some of you. It doesn't mean this is this way forever. And if one door is not working, choose another. One counselor's not working, choose another. One medication's not working, choose another. This is a battle. This is a war, and I see so much nothing. Some of you who are a bit older like me might know the name Bruce Coburn, who's now leading worship in Southern California, if you know him. Bruce once sang, "To kick at the darkness till it bleeds daylight." This is a battle, and so I encourage you to wade into that battle. And as Winston Churchill said during war, never give up. And if you feel like in that moment you have pastors and leaders, and I know on your church website there are counselors attached, like, please talk to someone. Some resources, and we're done. I know I come in, I know I talk quickly, and I have a short period of time. So my website has 1,550 links on it. This is a catalyst moment to get you thinking, but if you want more content, my card's on my table, brettallman.com is my website. Click on blog, and it's categorized. And my new category is marriage, but like media, mental health, pornography, parenting, and all the best I can find is there. And I mean, I have these videos like caffeine. I'm at a talk and a young girl walks up, 15, 16 age again, and she says, "So my church says I'm demonized." And I'm like, oh, bigger conversation here. This is how she begins. And then she said, "My mom and my doctor are putting me on mental health medications tomorrow for my anxiety." And I said, "I'm so sorry." It's 8 o'clock at night. She's cradling a Venti Starbucks coffee. And I just said, "It's a decaf, right?" She said, "Oh no, caffeinated." I said, "How many caffeinated coffees do you drink a day?" She looked up and to the left. If anyone knows brain, she's processing and counting. If you ask me, 2. I have 2 a day, every day. And she's counting, and I'm like, how many coffees do you have a day? 6 to 7. There's a principle called Occam's razor. The simplest answer is usually the answer. That church went straight to demons. Her doctor went straight to meds. If you're drinking 7 coffees a day, let's start with that. I have a client I work with. I have permission to say this. University student came in with anxiety. He was drinking 12 to 15 Monster Energy caffeinated drinks per day to get through exams and was wondering why he's tingly, he said. Actual words, tingly. That. On my top of my website is all my social media, and on that, in the dead middle is my Amazon shop with all the different categories of books, and I would encourage all of you to be readers. Scripture, we need to read more, and then books, just read 2 to 3 pages a day. This is a media conversation, but we're being socialized out of reading because we're used to 8-second TikTok, Instagram clips. I have hundreds of YouTube clips. I have all kinds of talks online for the students in the room, my Dating for Life, the questions. And I do have a brand new course on media coming out, and my Parenting Navigating Everything we're doing this afternoon is on Right Now Media. You guys have Right Now Media? So this is a small group series on there, and my talk called Men Navigating Everything's on there as well. My wife's always like, Brett, Men Navigating Everything. This is phenomenal stuff for women. And I'm like, Don, I am never doing a talk called Women Navigating Everything by Brett Ullman. Like, the mansplaining, like that's the definition of that word. So ladies, could you learn something from it? Yes, but it was made for men. If you're a reader, now the church one's on the bottom and the 4 on top, I wish and I challenge authors to have a more holistic view of mental health. The Reality Slap by Russ Harris is my favorite one and these aren't faith-based people. We need more people who will come from a Christian paradigm and wade into these worlds. The Anxious Generations for anyone with technology, little on the fear-based side, but all based in research. Lost Connections, the premise of this is we've lost connections with nature, with people, with purpose. I would add in with God. And the ripple effect, Eat, Sleep, Move, Think Better. During COVID, I released a 5-year project to bring out a single book, which is actually 7 books in one. 7 chapters in parenting, and then a whole bunch of other 9 small chapters on other topics. And those are good for students as well, and it's an audio book. 2 slides and we're done. Great courage with great care. When you are unwell, great courage. Get up, go to church, go to work, do the things that you need, and then great care. Time with Jesus, time with family, whatever it is that fills you back up. And I love Body, Mind, and Soul. Why? Because we can all do it. There's a book called The Power of Moments, and it just basically says that your life and your faith are built in moments. And the goal this morning was that this is a moment to think and to challenge us on our connection of our ancient faith with our modern world with this conversation on mental health. And John Maxwell just says, choose one thing from this morning, but you have then 3 days to do something about it. Thank you so much for the chance to speak on a topic like this. If you want to chat, I'll be back at my booth, and I answer all my own emails as well. And if this afternoon you're free, parenting at 2 o'clock. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back to the worship team. Thank you.